Now, we've been joined by Alina Karim, who will be facilitating this session today, and will be drawing on her experience to provide valuable insights and a deeper understanding into the subject. By way of introduction, Alina is an ACA and an FCCA, and she brings over 15 years of experience in accounting and finance education, and she excels in teaching ACCA exams such as SBR, FR, and FA, and helping thousands of students globally to achieve outstanding results, including top exam positions. And suffice to mention that Alina is also an IFRS international trainer. And beyond education, Alina also serves as a business reporting consultant, advising international businesses on financial and sustainability reporting, demonstrating her versatile expertise in both academic and corporate realms. Now, before I hand over to Alina, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items. There are some buttons at the bottom of your screen which will be useful to you in this session. So first, make sure player icons are selected because that's where you'll be viewing the content of this webinar. There is a chat function which you can use to engage with fellow participants, but please do not share any personal details, including phone numbers and email addresses. You will also see an icon that resembles a file, and if you click on that, you'll access all the helpful materials that are relevant to this webinar, including direct links. Now, feel free to resize your windows or to rearrange them as you like. And in case you have any technical challenges, if you can't see the videos or can't hear the sound, please try refresh your browser, as this normally helps. Now, if you've registered for this webinar, don't worry if you miss out on any bit, because the recording will be available to watch on demand, and you'll receive an email tomorrow with a link where you can watch the recording of this session. I'm going to hand over to Alina in a moment, and I'll be back with you towards the very end. Just a quick reminder, please put in your questions via the Q&A button. We'll be monitoring that and responding to them as we go. And we'll also pick some of your questions live towards the end of the session. We may not be able to respond to all the questions because we do receive lots of them, but we'll try to respond to as many as we can. And hopefully we'll be able to share some useful information with you. Having said that, I'll now hand over to Alina Karim to take us through the session. Alina, over to you.
Thank you so much, Martin. A very warm welcome to all of you in this SBR InFocus webinar. Here we are very close to the March attempt. The March attempt always has that tricky area that February has lesser days, but nonetheless, you're prepared, you're in that right phase of mind now where you are all set for your exam. So today I am going to share some key tips that are going to help you in your exam, attempting of the exam as well as the preparation. So let's formally start. Here I am, Alina, your facilitator for SBR exam today. I am going to go through the content of my presentation, in which I'm going to focus on some exam attempting techniques, some preparation techniques, and some marking related techniques. And throughout, I may not be able to answer all the questions. I see some questions are already coming in. Most of the content is going to be covered in the presentation, but anything which is left, I'll try to cover it in the Q&A session. So let's formally start. We've just had the exam for September-December 2025 exam attempt released. And with that came the examiner report also. The examiner has shared insights. As you know, one exam is published out of the exams which were tested in September and December. So we are going to take out the key areas that have been highlighted by the examiner as well attempted, as areas to improve, and how you can work around them. Starting off with the overall agenda, as I mentioned, is to see that we are going to have the common sorry, a few points are not showing over here, but it's all right. So we're going to look at the read the mind of the marker article. We're going to look at the examiner report. What are the learnings from it? And from there onwards, we are going to see the techniques. One thing that I always start my sessions with is that always have a very positive approach about your exam. Remember, the whole examining team wants you to pass, right? So that is something you need to keep in mind. They are trying to facilitate you the most by providing you all the resources which are going to help you in your preparation in advance. They've provided you with the syllabus out of which nothing can come up in exam. They've provided you an exam pattern. It's going to be exactly the same in the exam. They've provided you with the practice platform. Your actual exam is going to look exactly the same. They've told you about the time available per mark. That's going to be the same in the exam. So everything has been told by examiner in advance. Now it's on you to gain that knowledge and use it in your preparation. None of the items that the examiner has told in advance should come as a surprise for you in the exam. So, moving forward, starting off with some key examiner insights and common pitfalls. So, the first thing over here is what is the overall picture that the examiner has shared in the September-December 2025 exam report. The first thing was that in most of the cases, the failures were not due to technical knowledge. This means that students knew the standards, but they did not know how to apply it to the question, right? We had the first question in the chat, so I'm going to take it up from here and address it. Mohammad Hassan has asked it. So in your exams, to get maximum marks, you have to quote the relevant part of the standard, and then you have to apply it to the scenario. The examiner said that the students quoted the standard, but they did not apply it to the scenario. Remember, now you are at the strategic professional level. This is not your knowledge level exam. It is a strategic professional level exam. The examiner expects from you that you should be able to demonstrate that you can apply and use the standards in a scenario which has been given in the question. Now, from that, how are you going to tackle it? We are going to discuss it afterwards also. But do keep in mind that this is what has been stated by the examiner as the most common reason of failure. So don't just rote learn the standards now, and especially at this point in time. Today we are at 5th February. On 5th March, your exam is going to be there. So now is the time that you're going to apply all the learnings which are going to be there in the exam. So the next one is exam technique, time management, and application. Application I have discussed. The next thing I'm moving in reverse order, that is time management. Very importantly, the students are not being able to manage time. Why? You know you have a 100-mark exam. You know SBR exam is very long. What's the solution then? Practice. Practice within the time allocated. Otherwise, I have seen excellently prepared students also struggle with time management, resulting in missing out on attempting some of the exam. Now, if you're attempting, if you've missed out, let's suppose 15 marks, now you're not supposed to get 50 marks out of 100. You have to get 50 marks out of 85, which is way more than the 50% pass rate. So that is something that you need to manage. Again, we'll discuss it. What is the time allocation and how are you going to manage it? And then the exam technique. Identifying how you're going to pick up information from the question, how you are going to address it, and how you're going to structure your answer. In time management, the most common reason stated by the examiner is that the students are spending too much time on question number 1. We get feedback from students across the world. Students at times spend half of the exam time on question number 1, which is of just 30 marks. It is not worth it, right? Now, what is the purpose of telling you all of these issues? The purpose is you should learn from the mistakes that the others have made. Don't do this no matter how much you are tempted to spend extra time on question number 1. You should not go beyond the time allocated. Move forward, and then at the end of the exam, if you have time, you can come back to it. It's a computer-based exam. That's the biggest advantage. Even if you cut something, you paste something, or you add a few words in between, no one will get to know. Then writing knowledge instead of answering the requirement. That's something which we have covered. Technical knowledge and weak spreadsheet techniques. Again, that's a surprise. You know spreadsheet is going to be there in your exam. Your pre-formatted workspace, it's a given. Your last part of your question number 1, that is going to be your pre-formatted workspace. It's a compulsory part. No matter where it comes up in the question, it's a compulsory part of the exam. So when you know it's going to be there, it's a compulsory part. Why not prepare for it, right? And then very common issue. Not even preparing for question number 3 and 4. Students just prepare for question number 1 and 2, and which is why then they spend extra time on those questions because they feel they need to perfect. You're not going to get 50 marks out of 50 by attempting 50% of the marks. You need to prepare for question number 3 and 4, and it's nothing extra. The knowledge that you're gaining for standards, that's applicable across all questions in your exam. And then you have to remember that there is an own figure rule, right? Students forget that and they miss out on marks because of this. What is own figure rule, OFR? That, for example, you had to calculate the carrying value of an item. And then, like in this exam, we got a question on IFRS 5, which was non-current assets held for sale. So you first had to calculate the carrying value before the asset was designated as held for sale. Let's say your carrying value was incorrect. And then when you designated it at fair value less costs to sell under non-current assets held for sale, there was an impairment loss. Now, if carrying value was wrong, you may think my impairment loss is also wrong. I'm going to be penalized twice for it. But that's not the case. As I said, the examiner and the markers, they want you to pass. Now, own figure rule is that even if your one figure is incorrect, you're not going to be penalized twice for it. The purpose of this is that even if you get stuck or confused at any stage in the middle of the question, don't leave it just because you're not able to calculate one figure. Whatever you are calculating, as long as the remaining exam technique is right, you may just lose 1 mark for it. Okay? Now, some of these are the examiner's feedbacks, the critical do's and don'ts. Now, converting the learning that the issues that the examiner has shared, converting them into practical points. Now, first thing is with respect to marking, the time management. Now, in time management, yes, we all say 1.8 minutes are available per mark, but do not use this for the whole question. Use this on a part basis. As you know, in your 25-mark question also, in SBR, you know it's not one long 25-hour question. You don't get a case study. You always get smaller parts in the exam. A small part may be of 5 marks. It may be of 7 marks, right? So when you are answering your question, multiply that 7 marks with 1.8 minutes and allocate that time for that part. Because when students apply it to the whole question, 30 into 1.8, 25 into 1.8, at times they lose track because they spend too much time on individual parts also. So a very strong recommendation, the technique that I always tell my students is that while you are even practicing also for every part, make sure you are meeting the time. And for every part, it means reading the question, planning your answer, and writing your answer. And my recommendation in this case is the best way forward is you read the question. Learn the technique to read the question. When you open the exam and you have, let's suppose you're reading question number 3, start off by reading the background. Just read the names or the explanation, short explanation of exhibits that has been given. Don't go into exhibits and come to the requirements. Read the requirements first. The advantage of it is going to be that when you then go back to the exhibits, your mind is going to be focused on what is required. If you read the exhibits first, they can lead to 100 different questions, right? So start off by reading the background, jump onto the requirements, do read the description of exhibits so that you know what is going to be tested. Read the requirements, then come back to the exhibits, read them, read the requirement again, and write your answer. Always plan within the exam workspace, because when you're writing pointers, ultimately you can save time and use that typed version in your final answer also. So you follow these and you can easily meet this 1.8 minute per mark criteria. If any, you once the time is up for any particular part also, leave it, let it go, and move to the next part, right? Why? Because moving on to the next question, in the initial time period, in the initial few minutes, you gain the maximum marks in a new question, because you can then write all you know about it, right? The relevant ones, but all that is there that you know. When you go into discussion of items that you're maybe doubtful about, at times rambling takes place, that takes time, wastes time, and doesn't add any marks. So avoid repetition, be very straightforward, follow the technique of reading the question, and then stick to this time allocation. Another common question is, which question should I start from, right? You need to start with the question that you feel the strongest with, right? Now, in that case, I can't say which question you feel strongest with, but when you open the question paper, you can just in 2 minutes, don't allow yourself more than 2 minutes for that. Just skim through what you feel is being tested. You can see the names of the exhibits, and you will get a vague idea about what is being tested. Based on that, choose your question, right? A recommendation by the examiner is that do not start with question number 1, because there are quite a few complicated workings in it, and the students tend to then spend too much time on it. I know a lot of students, they prefer starting with question number 2, because they know ethics is going to be tested, they're comfortable with it, but there is no fixed criteria. Start off with the question that you feel strongest, but something that I would add on is that once you start a question, please attempt all the parts together, because if you leave parts to come back to later on, there is always going to be there can be a confusion in time pressure that you miss a part out. Even if you have written short description and you want to come back to it, write the name of the part, write the short description, so that when you you go through the exam again, you know exactly what is remaining. Plan your answer. Before starting your answer, plan the points that are going to be there. It can be the relevant part of the standard that you're going to mention, and then write the name of the company in your answer while planning. Why? So because you don't just need to show the knowledge, you need to apply it to the scenario also. So that is what I always tell the students, that when you write the name of the company in the answer, that is when it is a reminder for you that you have to apply it to the scenario also. Use headings to structure answer. There are no extra marks for heading, right? But it is good for you to signpost to the marker what you're trying to say. So when you feel that you need to make your point prominent, you can use headings. Don't make long paragraphs stating different points. Always start a new point with a new paragraph. So use either small paragraphs with space in between, or you can give a heading. Whatever you do, ultimately treat the marker like your student. Be like the teacher who's explaining things in a way that the marker can understand and they can give you a mark on. Apply IFRS to the scenario. I'm going to say it again and again. It's not a repetition, it's something deliberate. You need to apply the standard to the scenario. And when you say you need to apply the standard to the scenario, it also means that you need to apply just the relevant part of the standard to the scenario. So if, for example, your question is asking you about IS 16 and there is, let's suppose, an impairment of a non-current asset, you don't need to go into the details of what is revaluation model, how does revaluation gain work, how does the loss work, where do you charge it, etc., etc. What happens when an asset is disposed of? That's all irrelevant information. Another very common standard that the examiner complains about is IFRS 15. The team says that whenever we ask a question on IFRS 15, the students start writing all 5-step model. That's irrelevant. in most of your exams, if you see the past exam papers, the examiner tests one step out of the five-step model. It may just be about the allocation of the price to different performance obligations. Now, you don't need to go into all those details. Or if, for example, the examiner is asking about a modification of a contract or an agency relationship, you don't need to write the five-step model. So always in your answer, just write the relevant part of the standard. Of course, the part number one is you need to know the standard to be able to identify what's the relevant part of the standard. That's your knowledge. But once you have obtained that knowledge, now practice in a way that you pick up that relevant part of the standard, you write that down, and then you immediately apply it to the scenario. This is how you need to structure your answers also. Whenever you see a question, you have multi-standard questions in exam. You may get three standards, like I'll show you also in the recent exam, we got a question in which IFRS 5, IS 16, IS 36, they were all tested together. Write the relevant part of the standard, apply to the scenario. Then write the relevant part of the next standard, apply it to the scenario. So use the figures in the scenario, and always remember one very important thing. There is no extra information in your question. There is no information that the examiner has just put in there because they wanted to, and it has no relevance to the answer. No, that's not how ACCA exam works. Everything, every word that is written in your question, it is going to impact your answer. So if, for example, you can't identify anything to do with the statement that is written in the exam, it means you're missing something out. So think about it, what's the relevant standard, use it, and then apply it to the scenario. Show clear workings and audit trail. Whatever working you're using, don't just calculate it, always show it's working. It can be in the formula form in Excel sheet, it can be in brackets in a table that you have made, but always show the rationale behind your workings, because then even if your final answer is incorrect, you will get marks for the workings shown. And then attempt all parts of the exam. No choice available, don't leave anything. You attempt your full exam and you exponentially increase your chances of passing the exam. And always in an exam, grab the easy marks first. Now, what are your easy marks? These are the marks that you pick up straightforward from the question and place them in the answer. Straight information picked up. So for example, if I talk about question number one, in your discussion of the points and also in your spreadsheet, there are going to be some adjustments. For example, there is an impairment of goodwill written. Now you have a pre-formatted workspace. You need to make a heading of goodwill impairment and you need to charge impairment underneath it. That's straightforward, easy marks. So anywhere in your practice also identify where are the points which I can pick up straight from the question, place them in the answer, and I am good to go. That's your easy marks. I'm covering a lot of points over here, which are going to be there in the subsequent slides also. But I feel that when I'm identifying the issues, that's where I need to tell the solutions as well. Now, some of the don'ts that you should not be doing, of course. Number one, you don't need to go for perfection. There's no perfection in life. There's no perfection in your answer. That's fine. The standard solution that is provided by the examiner, I would say it is something beyond perfection. That is not something which is expected from you under the exam conditions. Don't go for perfection in answer. Just make sure that you're picking out the right points from the standard and you're applying them to the scenario. Now, I know a lot of students say, oh, we get overwhelmed when we see the standard solution. My answer to this is keep the standard solution at hand. But what you need to do is, while you are practicing, use that technique that I'm telling you. Identify the relevant part of the standard, right? So relevant part of the standard is, we got a question on contract modification. So IFRS 15, what does contract modification say? What happens in minor modification? What happens in major modification? Apply it to the scenario. Then see from the standard solution, have you touched upon all the relevant points that are there? in the answer. If you've done that, if you've done most of them also, that is fine, because at times the examiner answer is for even more marks than you can possibly score in the exam. So use the standard solution for this. Write answers in your own words, simple English, nothing fancy. There is no penalty for spelling mistakes in your answer or grammatical errors in your answer, as long as the marker is able to understand what you're trying to say. Don't copy paste from the text from the exhibit. That's the students at times tend to do that to make their answers longer. That doesn't get you any additional marks. Rather, it wastes time. You go to the scenario, you copy it, you paste it in the answer. No marks for that. Absolutely no marks for that. Only if you are going to copy something on which you're going to build up a point, that should be fine. But even in that case also, you don't need to repeat what the examiner has written. They know what they have written. Don't write everything you know about the standard. I've just given you the example of IFRS 15 for it. Study standards in isolation. Remember, your questions are multi-standard questions. We don't get questions in which one standard is tested for 25 marks, right? So when you're studying the standards, create the link between them. How is I-16 going to work if that same asset is then going to be impaired? How is this standard going to work if the same asset is then going to be held for sale, right? So create a linkage between your questions. How is I-16 going to work if then it is going to be shifted to I-40 investment property, right? So don't study the standards in isolation, create a link of them together, because that's how you get your questions. And there's ample past exam paper practice available for it. Do not ignore the verb in the requirement. This just happened in the recent exam attempt, that the examiner has said, I specifically asked students to calculate something. Now, calculate means you just need to show the figures. You don't need to explain. So if the examiner has said, that means no explanation was required. The students spent time on explanation, which had no marks, right? So identify the correct verb and then answer your question accordingly. Don't skip question number 3 and 4 due to time pressure. It's a must. Promise me you are going to attempt it. No matter how much you know about them, you are going to attempt them, right? Look for points in the question. Your question is your best friend in your exam. You see the question and the question guides you. In most of the cases, it tells you exactly what you have to do. And at times, they tell you in accounting treatment and they say justify it. So it's not even something that you have to go down the memory lane to identify what the working is going to look like. It is something that's written and you just have to justify it. And don't do totals where no marks are available, specifically in spreadsheet in question number 1. There are no marks for horizontal or vertical totals. Don't waste even 30 seconds doing that. That's not going to get any extra marks. Now, coming to some question-specific insights from the recent exam that has been released. The question number 1, its name was Woodfleet. It was a mix of consolidation. In this question, it was actually a mix of associate accounting treatment, disposal of associate to a simple investment, and it was a foreign investment. Now, managing time, first of all, please don't make that blunder that the previous students made and it didn't work well for them, that you spend too much extra time. You can do it as your question number 2, because by that time in the exam, you're already under time pressure and you know that you have to manage your time. Don't explain when asked to calculate. We've just covered that. Separate answer into stages, right? So like in this question that we have, I was mentioning, it was the company was an associate for some time. Then some part of it got disposed of. For the remaining time period, it was a simple investment. You have to write your answer for every stage. And this is not the first time this type of question has been tested. Whenever we have piecemeal acquisition or disposal, this is exactly how the question works. For maybe 5 months, the investment was at a different status. Then there was an increase or decrease in it. Then it was at a different status. Whenever you get such questions, make sure you're answering for every stage. How do you account for the first 5 months? How do you account for the gain or loss? How do you account for the remaining months, right? This is something which was there. So start of the year till the date of disposal, what happens on disposal, and what happens after disposal, right? Every time you have to do this working. In piecemeal acquisition also, what happens before acquisition, what happens on acquisition, and what happens after acquisition. Everything needs to be told. So this is how, if you make sure the stages are met, you get maximum marks. Now, even the basic explanations, they get marks. So while the question has the verbs explain or discuss, every working that you do, just explain it through the marker like a teacher explains to a student. So this and got added to this, we took this percentage, and this got to this answer. Explain presentation of items in relevant statements. Now, this was a feedback in the question number 1, that there was an exchange loss which had to be recycled from OCI to P&L. The students missed that part out. Remember, under IFRS 18, which is a new standard, you have to classify where every gain or loss is going. And reclassification is a very major part of IFRS 18, right? So wherever your gains or losses are going, mention them. There was a separate mark available for it. Now, there are going to be different standards also tested in your question number 1. It's not just a consolidation question. Different standards are also tested. Like in this one, we saw that it was talking about the foreign currency transaction also. For every transaction, you have to tell the impact on the relevant sections in P&L. So this gain will go to operating section in P&L. This loss will go to the investing section of the statement of profit or loss. Put adjustments in the right directions. This is such a common feedback and such small mistake. Remember, while you're making your spreadsheet, your directions of adjustments should be correct. You will lose out marks if you don't put it correctly. So for example, your question was showing a goodwill, right? Now, in that case, if goodwill balance is written in statement of profit or loss, statement of financial position, and you have to charge impairment, you put a minus sign and impairment. However, if your question is already showing some impairment loss which was in minus in your pre-formatted workspace, and you have to make an adjustment, let's suppose you have to increase that impairment, you need to subtract that also. If you need to decrease that impairment, you have to put a plus sign. So while showing your incomes and expenses specifically, please see very carefully how they are being shown in pre-formatted workspace and put your maths signs accordingly. This is something so basic, it's just simple maths. So students calculate the correct figure and they put the wrong sign, and that results in losing of marks. Reference the numbers, because especially in your question number 1, there are lots of workings. You need to make a reference, or you need to show the working in the cell also, as to so that the examiner is able to identify how you have calculated a certain figure. And lastly, you should not type over the existing figures. See the past exam papers, there is pre-formatted workspace, and horizontally, the examiner always provides the answer. That's the best way. Give the heading and provide the answer horizontally. In question number 2, it's a mix of ethics and standards question. Always provide a very clear structure of your answer. In this case also, for accounting issues, relevant part, apply to scenario. Relevant part of standard, apply to scenario. That's for the accounting issues. And when you move to the ethics part, right, remember question number 2 is not just ethics. It's financial issues plus ethics. Answer both the parts. So for financial issues, that same relevant standard, apply to the scenario. And for ethics also, structure it properly. Why? First of all, you need to identify the relevant ethical principles. Then you need to identify the threats which were involved. But again, ultimately, you are, in most of the questions, you are required to give actions also. See if the question is asking for actions or not. But in this case also, make a very proper structure. So don't just say there is an issue of objectivity, or the financial accountant is doing wrong by recognizing this accounting treatment this way. Always link both the scenario issues with the relevant ethical principles. So the finance director is proposing this accounting treatment, which is not as per the rules of IFRS 15. Therefore, it seems like an issue with respect to professional competence and due care. Or the finance director is proposing this accounting treatment, which will result in an increase in income leading to a bonus on profit. It is a threat to objectivity and self-interest, right? So link the scenario to the relevant ethical principles. That's what gets you marks, not just the technical marks, but also the professional marks. Don't give generic answers. Be very specific to the scenario and recommend actions wherever they are applicable. We have had a couple of attempts in which actions were not required, but look for it in the question. This is now what your question actually looked like. There was an inventory valuation. So very basic, your first exam of accounting, lower of cost or NRV concept was tested, and you had to link it with materiality. So over here, that is something which needed to be met. And then there was an IFRS 15 part, which related to performance obligation and deferred tax impact on it. So this is what we said, that it is a multi-standard question. You can see we are seeing IS2, we are seeing materiality practice statement, IFRS 15 and IS 12. Now, you don't need to give the names or the numbers of standards. There are no extra marks for it. But the accounting treatment needs to be correct. If you remember the number of standard, write that down. Well and good. But the accounting treatment needs to be correct. That's the main point. This is a sample that I had included highlighting how they are linking the scenario that there was a permanent contract which leads to self-interest and objectivity threat, right? So not just saying, oh, permanent contract is an issue, and not just saying it's self-interest and objectivity. Linking the points. That's what gets you the professional marks also. Structure your answer like this. Issue from the question, relevant ethical principle, combine them in one sentence, and you get 1 mark. Then your question number 3, this was the worst attempted question of the exam in terms of not attempting and the students attempting, them getting marks. And the issue is that the students don't prepare for it. So the first thing is prepare for it, and it's just your regular standards that you need to prepare. Read the question very properly and use that same technique, that relevant parts of these standards, and apply them to the scenario. Now, the worst attempted question of your exam, these were the standards tested in it. IFRS 5, 40, 16, 23, and 36. Sorry, I'm not moving to the chat at the moment, but tell me, are these standards the ones that you even studied for the first time in SBR? No, you've studied them in your previous exams also. So what is the possible reason that it was not attempted well, right? So you need to be mentally prepared also to attempt the question number 3. It was straightforward. It was in my terms, it was actually an easier question of the exam. So prepare for the standards, prepare for how you're going to write the answer, and attempt it. Make it relevant to the scenario. I highlighted this to give you the confidence that, and also remember how much assumed knowledge is tested in the SBR exam. Now, common errors with respect to IFRS 5, also the examiner had highlighted that the students did not know the basic technical knowledge. When an asset is going to be measured at fair value, when it is going to be at cost model, what items are going to be a part of the scenario, these were the common issues. For this, you need to prepare the standard, and in your preparation, learn how to apply it to the scenario also. You're going to get these slides also, so please do go through them in detail again to identify how you can do things differently. Then in question number 4 also, there were different standards tested. Remember, this normally has the stakeholder or investor focus. So one part is related to that, and that part has 2 professional marks also. You need to take that up and you need to address it in the exam. tell how the stakeholder is going to be impacted. And that's normally very straightforward. For an investor, there can be a current investor or a potential investor. Think, if you are that stakeholder, what will you do? What would you prefer? A company who's performing well, would you invest in that? Or a company who is showing losses, you're going to invest in that. So how that's going to work? And another thing was, very importantly, again, there were standards tested. So IS 32, IFRS 9, and in IS 32 also over here, it was something identifying whether it's equity or liability. It has been tested many times in the past exam papers. In the question number 1, there was a question on cash flow hedge, which was very similar to a question in the past exam papers when the examiner had tested climate action impact on hedging instruments. So I'm telling you this because it's important that you practice the past exam papers, because that will prepare you for what's going to come up in your exam also. Then very importantly, there was IFRS 18. It's a new standard. Its disclosure requirements were tested and MPMs were tested. Now identify the difference, what is difference between APM and MPM, and how you're going to address it with respect to disclosures. This was the feedback. There was just theoretical understanding. Practical application wasn't there. There was a very superficial grasp of IS 32. Please learn the details and you can see that they are tested over and over again. Now, this is also same things. Audit trail for working wasn't given. Relevant application was not done. All of this, you can solve it by practice and you still have time for it. Now, in terms of marking allocation, again, a common question is, how do I get marks in the exam? Now, you have the marking schemes available with every past exam paper. You can see the mark allocation from there also, but there is this excellent article on ACCA website, which is Read the Mind of Marker. I think it's available in your resources also. And within that, you have to you can see how the examiner has marked two scripts. Sorry, tongue twister. So one student has gotten very good marks, the other hasn't gotten that many marks. I've just taken one sample of that question to show you how the examiner has shown the working. So this was the script marked of the candidate number 1. You can see that in the first part, this is question number 1. I've taken the spreadsheet. Intra-group revenue had to be eliminated. So subtracting it from revenue, and see this part. This is what I wanted to really highlight. See, cost of sales. Cost of sales in pre-formatted workspace are given in minus. To remove something from it, you have to add it. Had you put in minus 30,000 over here in cost of sales, you would have lost the marks. This is what I was saying about the plus minus signs, and it's a very common error. Please don't underestimate it. So put in the correct figures and put in the correct signs also. Then there was one full mark for unrealized profit adjustment. If cost of sales had been positive, we would have subtracted this, but it was negative, so we've added it. There was administrative expenses related to reversal of impairment. So that has been given 1 mark. Then there were some reversal of proceeds, 1 mark. Now, over here, you can see that in the investment income, there was an income which had to be shown as a positive sign. There was a gain on disposal. If you see the heading, the text that I've written in blue. So there was a gain on disposal. Gain on disposal in investment income should have been added. The figure was correct, but the candidate had put a minus sign, so there were no marks for it. Then removal of proceeds, 1 mark. Correct share of profit of associate, that got 1 mark separately. You can see showing the formula is so important, that the 6,000 that is in yellow, that's the working for it. So showing the formula is a must. You can show it either in terms of working or apply the formula. There was 1 mark for it. So that this candidate got 11 marks out of 14. You can see all the descriptions that are there. Again, all these annotations are available on the presentation that we have shared. So you can go through that also. Not very beautiful handwriting. Please excuse me for that, but I hope you can understand it. Now, this was the working of the second candidate. The visually the answers were correct, but the figures were not right. So overall over here, and ultimately this final column, total column, there were no marks for it. You can see the marking scheme. So for the individual points, there were marks available. In investment income, one figure was wrong, but it was own figure rule, so there was 1 mark available for it. Similarly, showing the working, there is 1 mark available for it. Now, this candidate scored 6 out of 14, and that was because once again there was 1 mark available. The final figure was incorrect with respect to goodwill, but as per own figure rule, the marks for an error are only deducted once. So please do go through this. This was just to give you a flavor that all of this marking for the whole question is available in the Read the Mind of the Marker article. This is what your marking scheme in the latest exam looked like. And for every step, marks are available. So in case you have any confusion, you can consult that. In this, I wanted to show with respect to the examiner answers, maximum marks any student can obtain in this question were 10, but available were 15. So if you write any 10 valid points, you can get full marks in this exam. 15 marks were available for the workings. That's how much the examiner tries to help you. So all of these are overall reflections. Now coming to some last practical tips as to the way forward. Now your exam is on 5th March. Make a plan till 4th March of the practice that you are going to do. Divide it into sections, practice practice with a proper plan. Revise all the key learnings conceptually from Study Hub. Familiarize yourself with the ACCA practice platform and practice on it. Hands-on, time-bound practice is very important. And attempt the ACCA mock exam also. Martin will share the details for it. And some very last points. Read the requirements, guys, very carefully. Answer what is being asked in the question. Identify the technical area and answer accordingly. If there are more than one requirements also in your question, please address all of these. And in your answers, please avoid any kind of a repetition of points. You get marks only for once for writing a valid point. Structure your answer properly. I've discussed it multiple times how you're going to structure it, but this is a key. You need to write what, why, and so. So basically that's called a state, apply, and conclude rule. State the relevant part of the standard, apply it to the scenario, and then in just one line, tell what the overall accounting treatment is going to be. And closing tips over here, something that we've seen in the latest standard solution is that examiner is referring for every working where it is going to be shown in the relevant part in P&L. So if there is an interest expense on lease, it's going to be shown in the financing section in the statement of profit or loss. Learn from the mistakes that have been highlighted, answer the questions asked, and breathe. Relax. Don't let, that's my closing tip. After that, I'm going to move to the questions. Never let the exam overwhelm you, because that's when you start losing the battle. Always keep a grip. It's your mind game also. Focus. You overwhelm the exam. Do not let the exam overwhelm you. Focus on it. And even when you are panicking, read individual lines in a question. Even if you feel overall, oh my God, I don't know anything about this question. Read the individual points and start answering them, and you will get maximum. Okay, so this is all from my side. I will quickly move on to the questions to try and answer as many questions as possible. I hope I've answered some of them already. Please popping in your answer in the Q&A chat for anything which you want to ask further. So answering the maximum marks, SN, I think, already covered that now. So the state, apply, conclude, rule, and write the relevant part. That's most important. Standard theory first, or should we answer the scenario? Yes, that's important. Write the relevant part of the theory of the standard. That's for your question number 2, 3, and 4. Normally in question number 1, you don't need to write it that much. But yes, referring to the relevant part of the standard, I feel it makes your mind also focused on writing the correct answer. right? So what are the main strategies to pass an exam, and how should we prepare during the revision days? For revision days, I would say start off with the latest exam backwards. What I recommend is that have the summaries of your standards ready, have them in front of you. In the first few questions, what you can even do for your practices, for maybe first 4 or 5 questions, if you're struggling with the writing of answer, take the question, have your summary in front of you, just read the question and see from your summary what is the relevant part of the standard. Write it from there. I am giving you the permission. Copy it from your summary, write it in your answer, and apply it to the scenario. So, sort of like first 5 question, open book. You have the standard written in front of you. You just pick out the relevant part and write it and match, because this is the first critical step. Are you able to identify what the relevant part of the standard is which is being tested? Once you have done 5 questions like this, your mind will be trained to identify the relevant part of the standard. Once you have done that, now close the standards, you've revised your knowledge, put them on the side, and start attempting the questions independently. Now, for the next 5 questions, I am giving you permission, take as much time as you want, but attempt them fully and make sure you are covering the content. After that, time bound practice. Time everything. You have so many questions available in the ACCA practice platform. You have past exam papers, you have specimen exams, you're going to have mock exam. All of that, practice in the platform and do it on a time bound basis. That's how the best practice is going to be done. Then Maharna has asked, in general, are the different types of sale and purchase agreements under IFRS 15 examinable in SBR? Yes, Maharna, it is testable, and also this is something which is tested in financial instruments, where you have to identify how the investment is going to work. So yes, this is a technical area which can be tested. Also, are the sustainability standards IFRS S1 and S2 examined? What do we need to do to be able to do them in the exam? Very importantly, thank you so much, Maharna. Now, actually, 2 topics about which the examiner said in the examiner conference that I am going to test them again and again. They are, number one, IFRS 15. I know it's not that easy because it's not just one standard. There are multiple small accounting treatments, but IFRS 15 is going to be tested again and again. And number 2 part was actually sustainability reporting. And a very good question. This is what the examiner specifically said, Maharna, that I am going to test the application of IFRS S1 and S2. The team said that in the past, general sustainability related application, how is it useful, that has been tested. Now is the time that we want to test that the students should be able to apply the specific knowledge of standards in the exam, and that's a weak area. Students are still giving general answers. So definitely you need to prepare for IFRS S1 and S2. You can consult the ACCA Study Hub for that also. There's a wonderful past exam question named Kimi Mila that also tested areas very prominently. In the interest of time, very quickly, if I can talk about some major areas, you should be able to talk about the sustainability and climate-related risks and opportunities. You should be able to talk about the GSRM framework, governance, strategy, risk, and matrix, which are there. You should know about the greenhouse gas protocol, scope 1, 2, 3 emissions, how they are accounted for, timings which are to be followed. That's there. The statements should focus on statement of cash flows, P&L, and statement of financial position. The physical and transition risks both should be highlighted. A comparison of materiality with ESRS should be there. So these are the key points that we have seen over time. They are tested. You do attempt the question, Kimi Mila, and there's a slightly older question named ICOMA that was general sustainability, but Kimi Mila specifically tests IFRS 1, S1 and S2, but do cover it from Study Hub because other points can also be tested. Then there's another question for exams. Is there a way to know whether we have written enough for 1 mark. I'm asking so I don't end up overwriting. Yes, Maharna, I think I've discussed it during the presentation also. When you make a complete, the examiner says one valid, well-developed point. What is a valid, well-developed point? Which completely tells the accounting treatment. So not just like this expense should be charged. Why? Because the standard says this. That why, along with the accounting treatment, that gets you 1 mark. I remember someone in my class once said, "Oh, I've heard we need to write 25 words to get 1 mark." There's no such rule. So as long as you're making a valid point, so tell the accounting treatment along with the why, and that why comes from the standard. So as long as you're doing it, even if it's one line, you can get 1 mark for it. And I've talked about the professional marks already, how you can get marks. Please do go through, read the mind of marker also. That will also give you a good insight on it. In planning your answer, Joseph has asked, what exactly are you to be doing? Joseph, the thing that I've mentioned, you need to mention the relevant part of the standard. So for example, you write modification of contract, major, minor, and in the standard, contract A, major, contract B, minor, right? So when you write this, then when you start coming to the explanation part, that is where you can just expand on those points, right? Or the asset under I-16 carrying value, shift to IFRS 15, lower of carrying value and fair value less costs to sell. So just write those pointers and then you can later expand on them. Zahur has asked, I've questioned that a lot of students have failed on 49. Any special reason behind it? Zahur, normally that's when the students make a very major conceptual error in the exam. And the second very common reason for it is that the students do not attempt the whole exam. The examiner tries to pass, they re-evaluate also the scripts which are failing on 49, and these are the two most common reasons for it. So improve the knowledge and make sure you're applying things to scenario and attempting the whole exam. Very quickly, I'm trying to answer maximum once. Martin, please feel free to interrupt me whenever you want. What if we focus on question number 1 and master that and attempt all the remaining 3? Can I work out? No. Divya, that's precisely an error a lot of students make. Question number 1 alone is not enough to make you pass the exam. And what if something comes up in question number 1 that you are not very properly prepared for? You can't put your stakes like that. Do I need to relate IFRS in every question? Sheikh Hussain, yes. However, you don't need to write the name of the standard or the number of the standard. Just write the relevant accounting treatment and then relate it to the scenario. Angel, the list of standards which can be tested in the SBR exam, they're available on ACCA website. There's a list called examinable documents. So all the standards are available on it. Philippa is asking, I struggle to interpret what the question is asking. Any tips, please? Philippa, the technique that I've discussed, start with standards open in front of you, solve at least 5 questions like that. That will give you the confidence that you're able to pick out the relevant accounting treatment. If that's good, then you can move forward and do the remaining ones yourself. Martin, can I take one more question or is the time up?
Yeah, sure, you can take one more last time. Yeah.
Okay. Can we show all workings in Excel or do they have to be included with explanations? Bukola, normally the questions are structured in a way that the explanation comes in the initial part and then you have to apply them in the spreadsheet. So in Excel, you have to provide the formula, but you're not required to do explanation. The explanation happens in the remaining parts of the question. And just last one, Belinda is asking, is the past exam papers, mock and specimen exams enough? Yes, Belinda, they are enough if you're practicing them properly, but do attempt the further past exam papers also that are available other than the practice platform also. Okay, I think, yeah, that's my cue for stopping. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, guys, for joining in the session. I hope I've answered most of the queries and you found the session useful. Best of luck.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Alina. It's the top of the hour. I think that's all the time that we had for the session today. But just before we wrap up, I wanted to remind everyone about some 3 key resources that will help you all put into practice all the insights that Alina has shared in this session today, and all the insights coming from the examiner's reports therein. Now, the first resource is the ACCA Study Hub. So this is your time for practice, but just in case there are any concepts you haven't really grasped, it's time to go back to the Study Hub. Those specific areas, you can be able to reinforce your knowledge on those specific areas. The second one is the ACCA Study Resources YouTube channel. So lots of questions that you've been asking, we've got fantastic videos explaining all that. Head over to that YouTube channel, navigate to the SBR playlist. You'll find lots of both technical questions and, technical videos and exam technique videos. We've seen lots of questions around question 1, how to approach it. We've got a video there on how to approach question 1. We've got questions around how to earn the professional skills marks. We've got videos around that. So please make that channel your friend and you'll benefit a lot. Finally, the ACCA practice platform. Alina has correctly mentioned the specimen exam is there, the past and sample exams, and most importantly, the mock exam. So mocks will go live tomorrow, the 6th of February, and the debrief videos will be published on the YouTube channel next week on Friday, which is the 13th. And the reason we space them out like that is to encourage you to attempt the mock before, viewing or watching the videos. So mocks, again, very fantastic resource, an opportunity for you to, test yourself. We encourage you to do them under exam conditions, switch off your gadget, put yourself in a quiet place, attempt that mock as if it was a real exam and see where your weak areas are and where you need to improve. So the objective is really not to pass or to fail. It's essentially to identify the gaps that you need to plug before your exam. So that's it in terms of today's session. I hope you found it helpful and picked up a few tips to help you succeed in your exams. Just a quick reminder, the resources folder has everything that I had mentioned, including the slides for this session. So please do engage with it. You will find a survey at the end of this session. So please take a few seconds to let us know how you found it. And yeah, thanks everyone. Thank you, Alina, for that great session. Thanks everyone for joining. And thank you to everyone else in the back end who was supporting this webinar. Best of luck as you prepare for your March exams. And it's a goodbye for now.